Good morning, everyone. My name is Ludovica Colelli, and I am the Junior Coordinator and in-house translator of ISC. Today, I am here with Dr. Christian Sanderson, who is going to teach a workshop in Milan on June 10th and 11th, 2023. It is titled The Hidden Nature of Sibling Sexual Abuse when Sexually Harmful Behavior Masquerades as Consensual Sexual Experimentation. Dr. Sanderson, thank you so much for being here with us today and for your time to allow this interview.
Well, thank you very much, Ludovica, for inviting me for the interview and inviting me to deliver this two-day training in June.
So the first question I'm going to make you is, since the aim of these interviews to allow mental professionals and especially Italian clinicians to know you better, I'd like to ask you to better introduce your background. I know that you have specialized in treatment of survivors of childhood sexual abuse, interpersonal trauma, and domestic abuse. Please just share with us a little bit more about you and your background.
Okay. So I'm a recently retired senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Roehampton. And I have been training, teaching, and working with survivors on that as a specific client group. And it was important to make things available. So I was writing about this since early 1992. So my work is primarily working with survivors of childhood sexual abuse, but it's developed into working with survivors of domestic abuse, because often the two dovetail together, but sexual violence in general, and in particular complex trauma as we now know it. We didn't really use that term in the 1990s, but increasingly we see both childhood sexual abuse and domestic abuse as part of complex trauma and complex PTSD.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, I had a little problem with my Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah,
because I don't know if you know.
I should also add, alongside my client work and my training and working at the university, I've written a number of books on this topic. And here in London, I'm a trustee of a charity called 1 in 4, which is a charity specifically for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And we do something quite unique in the UK. We offer up to 2 years long-term low-cost counselling. This is very unusual. Most survivors of sexual abuse and childhood sexual abuse here in the UK often get, sort of 10, 12, 16 sessions. It's very unusual to get up to 2 years of work. And I've written a number of books for charity, and we've produced a number of reports on this very topic.
Wow, thank you so much. You have such a wonderful background. So now I would like to better focus on the topic that you're going to introduce in your workshop in Milan. Basically, the main focus of the workshop is to examine the nature and dynamics of sibling sexual abuse, the SSA, by children and young people, its impact and long-term effects. Could you please tell us more about the SSA?
Okay. So in my many years of work with survivors of childhood sexual abuse, I've always had a number of clients over the years that have presented with a history of sibling sexual abuse. But what is interesting, this particular type of sexual abuse is underreported, under-researched, and often there's very little clinical literature with how to work with that. Now, as what has been very interesting in the last 5-6 years, more and more people are coming forward with this presentation. And one of the things that we found is one of the difficulties in disclosing sibling sexual abuse, either to the family or to a professional, is that all too often it is seen as not as sexual abuse, it is seen as sexual experimentation. So common responses are, oh, you were just exploring. It wasn't that serious. I've even had very world-renowned professionals say to me, oh, but that's what siblings do. Well, it is true that siblings can and do explore and experiment sexually, but there's a big difference between what we call appropriate sexual exploration and what is childhood sexual abuse. So one of the things that I really want people to take away from these 2 days is, how would you as a professional be able to distinguish from the narrative from your client whether this was natural, age appropriate sexual exploration, and when is it actually childhood sexual abuse. So what happens is when people disclose either to families or to professionals, they're not believed. They are not believed that this was something serious. The other thing that's interesting that I want to, some of the participants to take away is that at the time, children normalize this. And they often say, when they look back, it didn't really affect them, and they dismiss it, they minimize it. But what happens is there's a delayed trauma. So they minimize it, they appear to be okay with it, and then the delayed trauma occurs in their late teens, early adulthood, when they start to have sexual relationships, because then there may be difficulties around having sex because there'll be returning memories. So the main aim is to understand the nature of sibling sexual abuse. One important factor is it is estimated that, but the thing is, because here in the UK we don't have a separate category for sibling sexual abuse, so if a person disclosed, a child disclosed, or indeed an adult, it would come under the general category of childhood sexual abuse. What we don't have is the reporting capacity to know, out of all of the allegations or reporting, how many are sibling based. And the current estimates are, which I think is really interesting, is that we believe that sibling sexual abuse is between 3 and 5 times more common than intergenerational sexual abuse in the family, i.e., it is more likely to happen by a brother or sister than a parent or a step parent or somebody as a family member who's an adult. Now that is really astonishing data. So it is much more common, but it is less disclosed. People don't bring it into therapy because they fear they'll be told, oh, that was nothing, that's just normal, don't worry about it. And I have lots of examples where clients have been told that. So I want people to maybe understand the nature of it, how and why it occurs, the motivation behind it, and also how to distinguish between what is age developmentally appropriate behavior and when does that become sexually harmful behavior.
Thank you so much. I believe that it will be inspirational for clinicians who will attend your workshop. Regarding the workshop, of course, it won't be just theoretical, but there will be also a practical session in it. Can you just describe how the workshop will be structured? Also, what are the main subjects that you're going to explore in it?
So you're absolutely right. It will be a combination of theory, but also quite a large proportion will be on how to work with that, the kind of things that clinicians need to be mindful of. For instance, one of the things that's really difficult and why children and later adults find it very hard to disclose is because because they fear of what might happen to the family, i.e. that it will break up the family. And we're going to look at those difficulties. We're also going to look at the challenges for how parents will respond, because what happens is the parents are put into a very difficult position on who to believe, who to support. So a lot of focus will be not just on the individual work with the client, but also having an understanding of some of the barriers to disclosure. And then what I hope to do, so I'll be looking at the very nature of it, how and why it happens, and there'll be a myriad of factors. It's not about parent blaming at all. We need to look at socio-cultural factors. And one thing that I'm going to look at with the audience is the role of access to pornography. We know that more and more young children are being exposed to that, and some children maybe then wanting to enact it with a sibling. So we're going to look at parental factors, socio-cultural factors, and individual factors. And we'll look at the motivation. Why would a sibling do this to a younger sibling? So we're going to look at that. And then we want to look at the impact. And I particularly want to look at the role of dissociation and the role of shame. So we'll do quite a lot around that. And then I will go and look at treatment. And what I'm going to propose is integrating a trauma-informed practice model of how to work with trauma when working with sibling sexual abuse, and also exploring the concepts of the power threat meaning framework. Now, I will be using lots of case examples as we go through this. And what I will also do on the second day is I might provide a number of case vignettes, and I will then actively encourage the participants to create a case formulation of how they might work with this individual. So it's a way of consolidating what we did on day one, and on day two is to have a case vignette, and then they can develop a case formulation perhaps in small groups, and then that'll be open to the group, then the larger group, to discuss their thoughts, their feelings, because one of the things we have to look at is our own responses to sibling sexual abuse, and it will be an opportunity to unpack some of the challenges and some of the difficulties they may find in doing that.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. To sum up, what are the main clinical skills that therapists will acquire to attend by attending your workshops?
Okay. So the main skills is psychoeducation knowledge. So one of the things that is really critical in the trauma-informed practice model is to provide a degree of psychoeducation to the client, so that the client has a better understanding of what happened to them, that this is not just sexual experimentation, this is actually sexual abuse. Then the other thing is to encourage them to see the client's experience not as what is wrong with them, but more what happened to them. So the power threat meaning framework, the skills in that is to understand symptoms as adaptations, accommodations to living under threat and living with confusion. So what we tend to do, so the kind of skills would be, you ask the question of what happened to you, not what is wrong with you. You ask the question, what did you have to do to survive that? To understand how they had to accommodate or adapt to that environment. We also encourage asking the question of what meaning did you make? What meaning did you make out of that? And then we'll look at the skills that are necessary for trauma-informed practice. And these are the fundamental principles, seeing the client through the lens of trauma, being able to create safety and emotional regulation. Then we also need to offer the client choices, that they are given choices and decisions they make. It also is about empowering the client to make those choices. Another skill that we have to learn is how to be collaborative, How do we collaborate with the client rather than taking a power over stance? And we have to be trustworthy. How do we demonstrate trustworthiness? And then we also need to develop what's called humility. And what humility is to be aware of our privilege as therapists and our knowledge base, and to equalize the relationship with the client, to make it less hierarchical. And most importantly, is to hold out a sense of hope. It is possible to, grow from this awful experience, to heal from this, to recover from this, and go into what we call post-traumatic growth. I will also look at how this work affects us. So the skills of clinician self-care, which is absolutely essential. And I want to conclude by saying this work is some of the most challenging work that anybody can undertake. It is also the most rewarding work. And one of the things that happens is when the client is able to go into post-traumatic growth, and about 70% of people are able to do that, we also experienced growth. And we call this vicarious post-traumatic growth or transformation. So in doing this work, we as therapists are transformed. And this is why the work is so vital. Not only does it transform clients' lives, it also transforms our lives. So I'm going to conclude with looking at what are the skills for a trauma-wise practitioner when working with this client group, and how we can grow from this and really be in touch with what it means to be human, and the vitality and the resilience of the human spirit.
Thank you so much. That's so wonderful. So thank you for your answers and for your time. I'm sure that all participants will learn a lot from your workshop in Milan. And to conclude our interview, I would like to remind that your workshop will be held in Milan, so it will be possible to attend it in person, but it will also be available on live stream for those who may prefer it. Of course, the seats in the workshops are limited, so if you're interested in the SSA and want to learn directly more from Dr. Sanderson, visit our website and sign up for the workshops as soon as possible. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Sanderson, for your time and your interesting insights about your workshop. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us today. And I hope that you will join us in Milan for these workshops.
Brilliant. I look forward to it. Thank you.